When I was little, I found my mom's credit card. And, being a 6-year-old, I saw my mom putting the credit card on her phone, and I knew how she did it. So, I decided that I was going to put it on my phone. So, I put it on my phone, and I was downloading Roblox, because I thought, hey, I can play with my friends here. That day, I spent $2,000 worth of freaking money on Robux. Let's just say a lot of my friends thought I was really cool and rich. When my mom found out, I hid from her for seriously like a day. And then once I got in there, she wasn't mad. She just said I was Captain Robux.
Storytime del 1. Jag var tillsammans med en kille i över 3 år och det var nog de värsta 3 åren jag någonsin har varit med om. Den här killen mådde inte bra. Han var control freak och han hade koll på allt jag gjorde. En gång så var jag i min bil och så hittade jag en sån här liten telefonliknande maskin. Och så ser jag att det här är någonting som har spelat in mig i flera dagar. Så den här psykopatkillen jag var med brukade lyssna på vad jag gjorde i min bil. Så att jag inte gör något bakom hans rygg. Och när jag konfronterade honom angående det här så slutade det upp med att jag fick knytnäven på ansiktet, sparkar i magen. Jag var tvungen att sjukskriva mig ungefär en hel vecka från jobbet. Och varje gång jag ville polisanmäla honom så kunde han övertyga mig till att förlåta honom. Genom att köpa blommor och be om ursäkt och gråta och lova att ändras. Och jag var så dum och gick med på det då. Och när jag gick igenom allt det här så hade jag en person som var där för mig oavsett vad. Det var min bästa killkompis. En gång när jag kom hem till min bästa killkompis med blåtira på ansiktet så sprang han hem till min kille och slog sönder honom. Och dagen efter när jag såg min kille med blåtira på hela ansiktet så kändes det så bra att se honom smaka på sin egna medicin. Men som sagt så löser våld inga problem och det här löste verkligen inte mina problem. Istället blev mina problem ännu större. Nu var min killes mål att bli av med min killkompis. Vi bråkade nästan varje dag om att min killkompis inte får vara kvar i mitt liv. Och som dum som jag var då så gick jag med på det till slut. Så jag slutade prata med min killkompis helt och hållet. Så jag gjorde literally allt för den här killen. Men till slut så fick jag nog. Det var vår årsdag och jag hade planerat värsta överraskningar till honom. Jag hade bokat hotellrum, köpt presenter. Och så väntar jag på att han ska dyka upp, men han dyker aldrig upp. Jag försöker nå honom, jag kan inte nå honom. Hans telefon är avstängd. Och den här psykopaten hade ju fått mig ladda ner en sån här app där vi har koll på vart vi är. Så ser jag ju att han är hemma hos sig själv, så jag går till honom. Och det är en tjej som öppnar hans dörr.
This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's not on Instagram. My mom and dad had me when they were really young. My mom was 17 and my dad was 19. For some reason, my mom doesn't like talking about him, so I never really found out exactly how they broke up. All I know is that they stayed together until I was 5 years old. Something really bad happened and then my mom kicked him out of the house. Like I said, I don't even know what happened. When I was 12 years old, he begged my mom to come back, and she let him live in the apartment we had. But he's pretty much a deadbeat. He didn't help my mom pay for the bills. He didn't even want to get a job. He even went as far as begging my mom to become a stripper. He said that she would make way more money than the job she had. She was a secretary at the time. When I was 15, he left our house again. I never got a bad feeling from him when he was living with us though. With a lot of hard work, my mom was able to put me through college. I graduated and I got a really good job. I bought my mom and me a house and we moved in together. Then COVID happened and I lost my job. Friends suggested I start OnlyFans and I decided to do it. I started making a lot more money than I ever thought I would. Some months I was making around $20,000. This one guy would send me $1,000 every single week. In exchange for pictures. Part 2 is up. This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on my Instagram. So this one guy started sending me $1,000 every single week. In exchange, I would send him private photos. Everything was totally fine until he started asking me questions. He would ask me things like, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite dessert? Because it's OnlyFans, I never really answered honestly. But then one day he told me, you love The Little Mermaid, don't you? And I was like, what? Because The Little Mermaid was my favorite movie as a kid. Watched it at least 3 times a week when I was a kid. First I thought it was a cousin playing a joke on me, so I decided to block them. The next day, I get another message. This one says, I remember how you used to love hot dogs. That's when I really shit myself, because my dad and I would make hot dogs every single Friday. It was our thing together. Like I said, he was a deadbeat, so he couldn't afford anything more than cheap hot dogs. And that's when he said, I have a confession. And before I could reply, he said, I'm your dad. I felt so disgusted. I blocked him and then blocked him from my cell phone too. That's when he sends me a long text message explaining why he signed up to my OnlyFans. He said that he was just trying to get to know me, that all he really wanted was to get me back as his daughter. Then why ask for nudes? Part 3 is up. This is how I found out my dad was following me on OnlyFans. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. As soon as I read his long text message about why he signed up, I once again blocked him. 20 minutes later, there's a knock on my door. Yep, it's my fucking father. Started knocking on the door so hard my neighbors came out. Called 911 and they came within a minute. I live in an area where there aren't too many people, so my house is really easy to find. Saw my dad walk to the backyard and try to get in through the back. That's when a cop stopped him and asked him what he was doing. Then he told the cop that I had invited him over. Then the cop comes to my door and asked me if I had invited him. I told him I didn't. Then I told the cop about OnlyFans. My dad was so ashamed he actually denied it. But of course I had all the receipts. I showed the cop my phone and the cop told him that he needed to leave me alone. He left my house and I didn't have the heart to tell my mom. But later that night I see another person sign up to my OnlyFans. Turns out it was my dad again. This time he was offering me $3,000 for more pictures. And he confessed that he couldn't help but love me as a woman because I didn't grow up with him. Excuse me, sir? You raised me for half of my childhood. Wanted to get a restraining order, but the judge says it's not that easy. So now I'm considering closing my OnlyFans. I don't think it's fair though. What? Just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. I met my boyfriend at the gym. Yeah, I know. Terrible idea. You can say it was lust at first sight. From the moment we saw each other at the gym, we couldn't take our eyes off each other. He came straight up to me at the gym and told me that he really liked me. But I was super shy. He was just some random guy I was meeting at the gym. But he was all about me. He asked me for my number and I said no. He asked me for my Instagram and I said no. For the next 2 weeks, he would come into the gym at exactly the same time I did. I would basically go work out whenever I had my lunch break. So of course, he would show up then. Of course, slowly but surely, he would charm me. He would even bring me lunch. After about 2 weeks, I finally gave him my phone number. That's when he asked me to go have breakfast, which I thought was weird. Should have been the first red flag, right? This was his excuse. He said he worked nights, but that his schedule would change all the time. So this meant that he would sometimes work during the day or at night. It was just random. So we went to breakfast. Here's the second red flag. He asked me if we could have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we lived. We both lived near the gym. Of course, I thought this was strange, but I said sure. He picked me up and the whole time at breakfast, he kept looking at his phone. Part 2. I just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. For our first date, we went to have breakfast 40 minutes away from where we both lived. Again, this was another red flag I ignored. During the breakfast, he was on his phone the entire time. And I called him out on it. I asked him why he invited me to breakfast if he was going to be on his phone all day. That's when he made up this whole sob story about how hard his work life was. How he was always stuck to his phone answering emails and text messages from his boss. And of course I believed it. I mean, I didn't know this guy from anything. After that, he put his phone down and I realized he was the most amazing man I had ever met. A man that can make me laugh is really important to me. And we laughed the entire time. We were telling each other jokes. We talked about family and values. We talked about our favorite foods, countries we wanted to go to, places we had been to. It was the perfect date. We even loved the same type of music, and our favorite movie was the same. So as you can imagine, I completely fell head over heels for this man. But the red flags continued. A week after our first date, he asked me to be his girlfriend. Did I say yes? Of course I did. But this was just another red flag. He began love bombing me and always wanted to be with me. But he never invited me over to his place. Part 3 is up. I just found out my boyfriend has a freaking wife. Disclaimer, is now my story time. I sent me on Instagram. Every time I'd ask to go over to his place, he would say no. First off, he told me that he had a terrible roommate, that his roommate was noisy and really dirty and the apartment stank. So for that reason, he didn't want me to come over. And of course I said, yeah, that's fine. Here's the fourth red flag that I ignored. He would ask to come over to my apartment at odd hours. Sometimes he wanted to come over at 3 in the morning. Sometimes he wanted to come over super early. And other times he wanted to come over really late. Because I have a 9-to-5 job, I kept saying no. I needed to get my beauty sleep, please. But even if I said no, he would still come over. Here's the fifth red flag. He would come over to my apartment and instantly fall asleep on the couch. I was always asking him why he was so tired, and he would just say that it was too much work. Well, we've been dating now for 2 months. A few days ago, I started getting suspicious of the situation, so I showed up to his apartment. But he didn't live there. It was an office building. I asked him to come over and I confronted him. That's when he confessed that he is married, and that he's been married for 10 years. But he says that his wife is a nightmare and that he wants to divorce her. What should I do?
In honor of Black Friday today, I will be making a money nail. Yes, you heard that right. I will be putting money in my nail. Before I get into the video, I want to let you guys know that I'm having a Black Friday sale, 30% off everything. Link in bio. With this nail design, it is very important to have a super clear acrylic. I added gold flakes in the little empty spot. Since you made it this far in the video, can you answer this question real quick? What is 56 plus 48? Let me know down below. Do you guys see this? I honestly like it. Would you wear this? Let me know in the comments. And of course, we gotta end with a clear check.
Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimers, now my story time instead of me on Instagram. The bitch that used to be my best friend, yeah, she's the worst person in the entire world. By the time I met her, my boyfriend and I had already been going out for 6 months. I met her through some friends and her and I got along really well. She was wild and crazy and she brought that wild and crazy side out of me. And at the time it was something that I did need, but I didn't realize just how wild she was. Let me tell you what this girl was like. She was the type of girl that would try to bring up sex in every conversation. Like no matter who we were talking to, she would always bring up sex. She would always try to impress everyone about how much she knew about it and how much she needed sex all the time. And sometimes I would ask her to not talk about it so much, and her response to that was, "Stop being such a prudy, bitch." My boyfriend and I decided to have all our friends over at my apartment for dinner. Since I had just met her, I decided to invite her over. This was the first time she was meeting my boyfriend and all of my friends. And of course, she proceeded to monopolize the entire conversation all night, and all she talked about was sex. Then she went to the bathroom and took off her jacket. She came out in her bra and shorts. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not me on Instagram. That's when she came out of the bathroom in her bra and a pair of shorts. Mind you, we have a bunch of our friends over having dinner at my place. I get up from the table and I ask her what's up. That's when she says that it's way too hot in my apartment and that I needed to turn down the temperature. I told her I'd give her a t-shirt if she wanted to and she said no. I'm comfortable in my body and I don't care if people look at me. When I look around, I see everyone staring at her. Obviously, all the guys are like oogling her goodies, but all the girls that are there with their guys are instantly upset. That's when my boyfriend bursts out laughing and says, "What's wrong with her?" She just starts laughing maniacally at what my boyfriend said. Then she goes and sits down next to my boyfriend and starts joking with him. You might be thinking I'm so stupid for this, but I decided to let it go. Oh yeah, she's also the type of person that never wants to go home. That's when I had to be honest with her and I told her that she was making everyone uncomfortable. And I asked her to leave, which she did. A few days later, she comes over to my place so that we can get ready to go out. My boyfriend was going to go out with his friends and I was going to go out with her. 2 seconds after she comes into my apartment, she walks out of the bathroom completely naked. And my boyfriend's just sitting there on the couch watching her. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, not my story time, it's not me on Instagram. That's when she comes out completely naked. You could see everything. Boobs, butt, and V. And my boyfriend is sitting on the couch. As she comes out of the bathroom, his jaw drops to the floor. Then she says to me, "Oh my god, I couldn't find a towel, sorry." She walks straight into the guest bedroom where she has her clothes. My boyfriend and I look at each other and I'm completely disgusted. He, on the other hand, thought it was hilarious, so he starts laughing. Then she comes out of the guest bedroom in panties and a bra. I mean, I guess at least she wasn't naked this time. That's when I tell her, "Do you need help getting dressed or something?" She says, "Oh no, girl, I'm just thirsty. I'm gonna get something to drink." So I said to her, "I'll get you something to drink. You can go get dressed." At this point, I had it. But guess what? This wasn't the last time. A few weeks later, I wanted to go to her place to get ready this time. But then she insisted on coming over to mine instead. That's when I got the feeling that she had done all of that to get my boyfriend's attention. And I straight up told her, "Are you just walking around naked at my place just because you want my boyfriend to see you?" Of course, she denied it. She says he's cute, but he's not that cute. What? Part 4. Story time about how my best friend walks around naked in front of my boyfriend. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's not me on Instagram. At this point, she had been naked in front of my boyfriend twice, but it wasn't the last time. She came over to pick me up one time and I told her to wait for me downstairs. Well, instead of waiting for me downstairs, she decided to come up to my apartment. While I was in the bedroom changing, my boyfriend let her in. That's when she comes straight into my bedroom without even knocking and says, "Hey girl, do you have a dress I can wear?" The dress she was wearing was absolutely perfect. I asked her why and she said that she didn't feel sexy enough. Without even me saying yes, she started raiding my closet. Then she pulls out a very expensive dress I had not even put on yet. My boyfriend was standing in the doorway just watching the whole thing go down. I look at my boyfriend and he just rolls his eyes at me. Then out of nowhere, she takes off her dress and she's completely naked underneath. She looks at my boyfriend and says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't see there." My boyfriend turned around and walked away. I finally closed the door and confronted her about it. She told me that I'm a prude and that I needed to relax. I kicked her out and we haven't spoken since. She's been begging to talk to me and hang out. My boyfriend told me that if I felt uncomfortable around her, then for her not to come over. But he says that he's fine with her. His reaction also upset me too. What should I do?